Hi Leo, welcome to your mid-December 2020 General Tarot Update. It's Raina here. So I just wanted to tie this mid-month update to the astrological event that is occurring at around that time, which is the solar eclipse in Sagittarius. And this is occurring on December 14th. And for Leo, this is happening in the house that you rule, the 5th house. So this can be very bright and pleasant for you. New love, new creative projects, a new hobby that lights your fire, being that it is fire energy. So let's see what happens with that, and let's see if the cards may reflect that in some way. This is a general focus. I'm going to add another card. Interesting. So we have a lot of major arcana cards here. I've only picked 7 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 7 are major arcana cards. Sounds pretty eventful. So let's bring out the past card and the current card. So the past position is the Magician card. Sorry that I have to, such a tight shot here. The Magician card is about stepping into your own sense of being able to create magic for yourself, being the alchemist, being the person who can take what you have, and here they depict the 4 elements, and be resourceful and co-create your reality, whatever that means for you particularly. If I was to tie it to the mundane level, there's evidence here of maybe going through a transition. Perhaps you are going into business for yourself. The 5th house is also the business that you own, so that might be some catalyst for starting your own business. And who knows, maybe it's even something you do on the spur of the moment and you weren't even planning on doing it. Eclipses have a way of kind of nudging you along, I guess, in a particular area of life, and if you are obedient and you just go with the flow, you can follow your bliss in a way. So this can be a situation where you have, for whatever reason, realized that you have to do this for yourself. And a few years ago, you were in the boat where the eclipses were falling on the axis of Leo and Aquarius, and having your own, triggers. And this was, I would say, from about maybe 2016 to 2018. I'm not entirely sure, but in, a few years ago, you had eclipses in your sign, Leo, and opposite sign. And so if you think back a few years, you may kind of know that things changed a lot in a relatively short period of time for you. Or maybe you can prove that it doesn't always work that way, and you say nothing changed in those years. But I have a feeling that there probably were changes. And as a result, and being a fixed sign like you are, you may have had to even deal with your identity, having a crisis of identity and who am I? Now, usually Leo people want to be seen as successful and on top of things. And with eclipses, you might have to start from scratch in some way, or just radically change your conception of yourself. And so this is the aftermath of that. And one of the things you may have taken away from that experience is that you wanted to call your own shots. And so the Magician is a part of that. The heart of the matter is the Queen of Swords, so you may be having to make a decision that is not necessarily easy to make. And maybe another person is involved. And if that is the case, you are wanting to be compassionate with that person and not being cold and not rejecting them. But it might come down to staying with a person or leaving. The Magician really gives you that sense of independence, where it's like you're saying to yourself, I don't really need anybody else. But this can even be on the job, where you are parlaying your wisdom or your knowledge that you have gained through years of applying yourself into being an expert on something. And you might feel like, hey, I've got this. I can do this. I don't need to ask anybody permission for, kind of like starting my own business or taking the knowledge that I have gained and, monetizing it, making it something where I can get paid from and I can call my own shots, have my own hours. If this is a relationship, it can also be the Magician actually connects to Aries, which is another fire sign. But sometimes, and when I say a particular sign, understand that could be their moon sign as well. Sometimes the moon sign, if it's strong enough, it can come out on top and kind of overshadow the other part of the person's personality. And if this is somebody who has either sun or moon in Leo, in Aries, you might be the kind of person who has mixed feelings about their forthrightness, or their tendency to be quite aggressive, because there's only so much room for ego in a relationship. And I'm semi-joking, semi-not. So if this is like literally an Aries person, there might be kind of power clashes within the relationship. If this is pertaining to your alchemy, then anything that you do, if you've been changing your tune, so to speak, other people may fall away. And that might be distressing to you if you still are attached to them. Or a job that, you feel like, hey, I should stay here because it's something that I can count on, but everything in your being is kind of pulling you in the direction of, totally being self-sufficient. The higher message is the World card, the end of an era. And I'm trying to find specifics on how this relates to a cycle in your life. But of course, for tarot readings, it's a little bit complicated because I'm reading for the sun signs, but I'm talking about astrological transits, which are different, and that could relate to the rising sign as well. And then I'm trying to, have a one-size-fits-all. Obviously, there isn't that. And if you are watching this for your sun in Leo, understand that with your rising sign, it can be any sign as your rising sign. And that means that your chart may be like completely different from the timing that I'm talking about with this. And perhaps there is something, maybe you have, let's say you have like Cancer rising or something like that, or an earlier degree of Leo rising, and this is your 12th house. You have some planets in the 12th house, for instance. That might be a time when you need to tie up some loose ends. But in general, the World card is like about the end of an old cycle. And how does that really manifest in terms of your ability to move forward in your life? Do you have one foot stuck in the past? Are you really poised to move forward? It's funny because we have as a challenge card the Ace of Swords. So aces are beginnings, but this is in the challenge position. When I see this card, I think of somebody who is, maybe in denial to some degree. And denial can come because you can't let go of a relationship, for instance, that is truly over. And I would say with the Magician card, if this is not somebody who is an Aries individual, sun or moon, perhaps this is a facet of you that you have become more resourceful and self-contained. In other words, you don't need another person's reassurance, or even maybe before you were higher maintenance and you required them to be there all the time for you. I would say especially if you have inner planets, Venus and or Mars in Cancer, kind of clingy, or a moon sign in Pisces, Libra, something like that, Cancer. And perhaps this only manifests in your personal relationships, and other than that, you're very self-sufficient, and you're like, you don't have this need for somebody's reassurance 24/7, but then, you have this part of yourself when it comes to one-on-one relationships of the romantic variety where you're very vulnerable. So something may have occurred that made you realize that you had to take care of yourself. And, whether it was a crisis with your partner, sometimes it can come through a partner's illness, a partner's loss of a job, or some kind of setback on them, and you had to kind of take over, or infidelity or something like that. I would say that the chances are that if this is related to a personal relationship, that it is something along the lines of infidelity or just growing apart. And or if you have an age difference and that person was almost like taking care of you to some degree, and you've kind of grown up and you can take care of yourself, and that's really a wonderful thing, but the other person may view it as threatening in some way because they had that identity of being your protector and maybe even a bit of control in the relationship. What's coming in is represented by the Temperance card. Sometimes this can also be an advice card, and you see the 1 foot on water, 1 foot on land. This is connected to Sagittarius. Maybe it's a timing card of reminding you of that eclipse, because this reading goes until mid-month, so it covers that period. And the Temperance card, though, to me, is also a card of realism. It's a card of sobriety. Sometimes it can be literal sobriety, where a person stops being addicted to a certain substance. In that situation, that could even be that you've had to really turn your life around and do a lot of things differently. But I have a feeling that if this is regarding addiction, that this is more about the person that you're with, because this is why you are in denial. You want things to be a certain way, and they simply aren't. And at a certain point, we have to admit that to ourselves. I think that's what the Queen of Swords, it's like being at that crossroads where you can only keep lying to yourself or you can take action. And once you see things as they really are, which in my own experience is not necessarily something that you can just say, snap your fingers and do. Sometimes it's a series of events that happens that forces you to do this. For instance, if you're with somebody who has a substance abuse problem and you have maybe that person was sober for a while and then you're starting to see these patterns creep up, like coming home late, maybe smelling something on their breath or on their clothing that, pertains to their drug or substance of choice, and you ask them about it and they deny it, and it just gets progressively worse until you have to force yourself to admit that it's true. But I will say that when that day comes, I believe that fixed signs, they just like snap into reality. And then they are never going to fall for that again. That's the funny thing about fixed signs, is that your stubbornness can work both ways. You might be in denial for a long time, but when you finally get the memo, then you are ironclad of like, I'm not accepting this anymore. So you have a resolute attitude. The Temperance card may be that you, especially if you're like, a mature person who is kind of like nearing the end of a particular career that you've had. And maybe you're not going to retire completely, but you feel like there's some kind of an ending in terms of it's run its course in your life. Or it might be the type of career that you feel is kind of becoming obsolete. It's on its way out. And yet, because you either love what you do or you just don't want to have that change in your routine, you might be like a lot more in denial than you typically are in life. And so that might be why the Ace of Swords is in the challenge position of like, yeah, this is over with. It's time to begin a new era in my life. And the Temperance card is bringing the spiritual imbalance with the material, because either people are up in the ether and the hippies, and they're just love and light, but they can't they can't pay their electric bill, or they are speaking of lights, they can't keep their lights on, but they're always saying love and light. Or somebody who is very grounded and on top of their material game, but they, just always roll their eyes when people are trying to tell them about there's something more to life. And I made the mistake of saying that I thought that maybe Leos weren't one of the most spiritual signs. And I got people that responded to me and told me, kind of schooled me, in this. And I had to say, you know what? You're right. I was wrong. It's just that in my own experience, I haven't come across a lot of them that are overtly spiritual. It's usually, they're full of life and they may be very ambitious, but in terms of the people that I've dealt with that are Leo, it's not necessarily that they are on this spiritual path in a very intentional way. And they might even go to church, or they might even meditate, but there's like this, the demeanor of a spiritual person. Usually Leos are very larger than life, and that kind of almost competing with God for top billing status. No, I'm just joking. But, people made a good case for Leo, and I take that back. So it might be just finding that balance, that sweet spot as well. And the outcome, I do have a couple of cards here. I don't like to end on the Eight of Swords, but it's important to note that that this may be the old tapes playing in your head. So if you come for whatever reason, and this may be your natal chart may reveal this, because typically Leos will not have this feeling, but some Leos are vulnerable because of their childhood, like having Neptune in the 4th house is a big one, or Uranus in the 1st or the 4th houses. So this person may feel like because of certain events, and some of them may be you can't control other people's behavior or the state of your career, that you feel like you want to do your own thing, but you still are afraid that it's not going to work out. And so you doubt yourself. Yes, if somebody has inner planets or the moon in Virgo, they can second guess themselves very easily, or Pisces. And what I would say about this is that it's kind of a dance, because I was going to suggest affirmations in order to counter those kinds of old tapes. But I am of the belief that you cannot just do affirmations to drown out the voices in your head that are telling you that you're not good enough, because that is a form of resistance as far as I'm concerned. And, you know, there are people that are unwilling to look at the shadow. They want just everything to be, you know, in la la land, and I just don't operate there. So I feel like it's important to look very deeply in practicing self-inquiry, which the Eight of Swords is not self-inquiry. The Eight of Swords is more like ruminating, regurgitating type of behavior. And this is about sitting with the self, not trying to distract yourself with outer things, and really tapping into, what am I anxious about here? What do I feel oppressed by? And, you know, is this really something that I need to fear? Or is this coming from that reptilian brain that wants me to feel like I need safety at any cost? And looking at your deepest fears and seeing if your plans are so much a threat to your psyche that you feel a sense of anxiety being triggered. And, you know, chances are you will uncover erroneous assumptions that you have made about what it is that you want to do. And there, on occasion, you may realize too that you need to tweak your plans, that how you're doing it isn't sustainable. It's, again, combining the inspired with the practical. And the outcome card, well, the along with that card, maybe the elaboration card, the Hangman. This is, so here we have in the spiritual message position, the World card, and then we have another major arcana card, the Hangman. What that suggests to me is that you have to become comfortable, Leo, with a transition period. Maybe you are ending some aspect of your life, but something isn't rushing in to fill the void. And you have to be comfortable with just being in a state of limbo, and this can be about surrendering to whatever the situation is, not trying to fight it, not trying to assert your will in a particular situation, but allowing, you know, and that's why it says in the Last Supper, thy will be done, you know, talking about God or the universe. And it's not passing the buck or playing small in your own life. It's knowing that, yes, like the magician, you can shape your reality, but you can't control 100% of it. And so people who misunderstand what the law of attraction means, they may be very in for a rude awakening. But those who are willing to meet life where it is, coming to you at this particular moment, those are the people that can navigate change the best. Because they're not saying, I don't like this present day moment, I need something else. They're willing to work within the framework of this moment. So there's a surrender. There can be a surrender, which does not mean giving up. It simply means that you stop resisting the situation. Okay, that's what I have for you, Leo. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.